As I said before, we are really honored to have Alon-Lee and Rula with us this Shabbat. We are and have been very supportive of their efforts with Omdim B'Yachad, standing together for quite some time, and I know that many people here follow their activities and are supporters of their work, which is one of the very few things that give us hope that there will be a future of coexistence in these very troubled days. But I will let them talk about this. I would like to introduce them. Rula is the national, Rula Daood is the national co-director of Standing Together. She's a speech pathologist by profession. She's a Palestinian citizen of Israel, born and raised in the Galilee village of Kafr Yassif. And she now lives in Yafo, in Jaffa. She began her activism in her home city and later became involved in promoting Jewish-Arab partnership in mixed Jewish-Arab cities. Before joining Standing Together, Rula worked as a community organizer, organizing events and protests that drew hundreds of activists. And Alon-Lee Green is the national co-director and founder of Standing Together. He got his start organizing Israel's first trade union of waiters in a chain of coffee shops. And then he went on to found Israel's first national waiters union. Alon-Lee emerged as a prominent leader of Israel's social protest movement in the summer of 2011 and subsequently served as a political advisor in the Knesset, in Israel's parliament, and we're really honored to have you. And please come sit down and tell us what we need to hear.
Stop the war?
Yeah.
Release the...
Well, first of all, thank you for having us. You know, I think most of you heard me for the 2 minutes. We promised we would give 1 minute, but I think I spoke for 3 minutes. There is a different feeling when you get in, you know, a synagogue, a church, a mosque. Something feels different, and the energy becomes, you know, more peaceful. But still, with having said all of that, you know, we come here with a message, and we come here because since the 7th of October, we've been also struggling, leading, you know, a struggle from the place that we live in, within our society, in a very clear message and very clear demand that hasn't changed. And that demand is a ceasefire, a stop to the war, a hostage deal that can bring back 101 hostages alive and not in coffins, and, you know, an end to the destruction and the killing and the starvation that we see day after day happening in Gaza. And I would say, you know, there are very simple demands because people deserve to live in safety. We do deserve to live in safety. But still, we live in a place with a government and a leadership that doesn't care about its people. It cares about, you know, the interest of a very small minority that lives with us, that has, you know, genocidal goals and ambitions of conquering more land, of, you know, eradicating whole families, building, you know, settlements in the north of Gaza on the tunnels that the hostages are in right now. And the demand, you know, that we want, the thing that we fight for since the 7th of October is a stop to all of that. Because we believe, as a grassroots movement that has in it both Jews and Palestinian citizens of Israel, in very simple facts that will never change in the place that we come from. You know, at the land that we live in the land there are Jews and Palestinians. I call it home, Alon-Lee calls it home. Nobody is gonna just pack up and leave. And it's about time to understand that we deserve a leadership on both sides that is not catastrophic for the people who are living on the land. And we also believe deeply that that struggle should be led also by people, because we are really the only ones that can really change the reality that we live in. And yes, of course, we do need help. We do need help from abroad, from people, but we need to transform the society that we live in to understanding and demanding that this war isn't in the benefit of anyone. So thank you for being here, and thank you for listening to us. And of course, after we present, we would love to hear if you have questions, but I will give it to Alon-Lee.
Thank you so much. Shabbat Shalom again. Just a few minutes before we entered this sacred place on Shabbat and put down our phones, we got a notification in our phones from all the news outlets in Israel that a video of one of the most known hostages, Matan Tzengauker, was released by Hamas. And in this video, he is alive, in terrible shape, mentally, physically. It's extremely tough to watch. He has a moment there where he talks directly to his mom. His mom is the lioness of all the families of the hostages. She's on the streets every day and hour. She goes and meets with every parliament member that will listen to her. She speaks in every corner of the streets, and she demands, she cries. You can hear in her voice already how much she shouts and cries to release her son, to release Matan. And he talks to her directly in this video. He says, "Mom, I see your efforts. I know how much you do for me. And I wish you will see me, and I will come back to you as soon as possible." And it was heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking. Both Rula and I, we published. We stopped a second. We were worried we will be late getting here. We stopped for a second. We recorded videos and posted them, calling the Israeli public, our followers, to go out to the streets tonight. It's the evening already in Israel, the Saturday evening. There are demonstrations of the families of the hostages. We said this is the moment to go to the streets, even though rallies have become smaller in the late few months, even though we're tired, even though it is hurting to be there, to see each other after 14 months of failure in demanding the end of this reality. But we must go out. And we also must understand that in order to bring Matan and another 99 hostages back home, we have to end the war. And this is something we also bring, and we also say, as standing together, growing in numbers of followers and members across the country. As a Jewish-Palestinian grassroots movement, we say, we cannot release the hostages if we will not end the war. We cannot save ourselves. I'm speaking as an Israeli Jew right now. We cannot save ourselves right now if we will not also save the Palestinians. Holding this complexity, holding this truth of having actually two true realities at the same time is something very tough that we have been trying to do for 14 months, actually today, exactly today. And waking up in the morning, seeing these videos, as Jewish citizens, seeing the videos of the hostages, seeing still videos of survivors from the Nova Music Festival, seeing stories of soldiers falling and dying and their families crying over them in funerals. This is our reality. And no matter how much people will shout at us from the outside of the society, will condemn our society, we live in our society and we know our society, and this is our existence. And in the same time that I will open my social medias and see these stories, Rula, a Palestinian citizen, can sometimes live in the same building if we live in Jaffa or Haifa or a different mixed city, and she can turn on her social media and see rubbles, dead children. More than 15,000 children have been killed already by us. Yes, we should say it, by us in this war. Cities that have been eradicated, flattened, nothing left, no one building. Families that 30 family members of them have been killed by us. Mothers that are shouting their lungs out because of this reality. And that will be this reality, and it will exist, and Palestinians will see that. And in the middle, standing together exists, trying to bridge this gap, trying to bring those two communities, saying that we don't need to solve this reality on the expense of the other, that we don't need to be saying that my truth exists and yours does not exist at all. Yes, it is very complicated to speak in one message, but in both two languages. We never write something in this language and something else in a different language. It's the same message, but everything we publish, everything we do is in two languages. But we try to create this bridge. And I think that this theory of change that puts the change in front of what we say, not the words, not terminology, not saying that you need to tick a lot of boxes in order to enter the club of the change that we want to create, but saying that the change we want to create is actually based on the understanding that, yes, our realities are not equal, and we need to face it. There's no symmetry in the reality in Israel and Palestine. I, as an Israeli Jewish citizen, have privileges that Rula, as a Palestinian citizen, do not have. We, as Israeli citizens, even, and especially us as Jews in this land, we have a reality that Palestinians can only dream of, especially if you live in Gaza, if you live in the West Bank, if you suffer violence of settlers in the West Bank, and also violence of the army in the West Bank, that is an occupying army in these areas. But still, even though we recognize that we don't lose in the same way from reality, we do recognize that we all lose out of this reality. And that necessarily means that we can all benefit from the reality that we are trying to create. And this is the theory of change, of standing together. And this is also why it is important for us to come here and speak with communities and crowds that we see that have been struggling, honestly, have been struggling in the last 14 months to be bridging the gaps, that saying, yes, we looking at different experiences, each of us sees something else. It is okay. I wish it won't be that way, but it's natural these days. This is how it works. But still, we can work together towards the same goal because we all want to end this reality. It's important for us to stress that and to say that, because it is time to understand that we don't have the privilege to be fighting each other anymore. Netanyahu secured at least 2 more years right now, secured, done, in power. Those 2 years are going to be, together with Trump, secured as well. Thinking of the combination of those two, hearing the radio interviews of all the ministers Trump has appointed, and you know that the ambassador to Israel, this lunatic person, going on radio saying 2025 is going to be the year of annexation, and you know what, we are gifting you also the gift of Jewish settlements in Gaza. No, thank you, but this is the reality. So we need to remember that this is the time to build new alliances in the face of their alliances. And we have to be able to do that, and this is a message. And maybe, Rula, maybe you can speak more about, if we have the time, about the campaigns.
No, I was asking if you have questions for us.
Can you speak about just the origins of standing together and what your strategy is?
Yes. Well, I do want to stand up, actually, because I can see all of you, and it makes it uncomfortable for me to speak also. So hi, everybody. I will give a bit of a background about standing together and how we were really able, to still be there as a grassroots movement that has both, Jewish and Palestinian leadership and people in the streets despite everything that's happening. So Standing Together is a movement that we started at 2015, late 2015, and we started back then, unfortunately, again, it was the times after a war with Gaza in 2014. There was very much, violence in our streets by people, at people, by the police. And there was, a feeling that everything is, falling apart again. And that happens a lot of times in Israel, in the Israeli society, when there's a war. And we've had too many wars. Just to give you a perspective, I think the last 10 years, there has been 12 wars between Israel and Hamas. And people live through these wars. And in each and every one, unfortunately, our government, that is still led by Bibi Netanyahu, he says the same thing. He says that this war will be different, this war Hamas will be eradicated, this war will be victory, the same sentences to the people. But we understand that in each and every war, Hamas is still there and it's getting stronger because there is no real military action that can eradicate an idea. The only way to eradicate an idea is to give an alternative idea to it. And our government is not in the business of really weakening Hamas because they need Hamas for their own political agenda. So in 2014, when after the war, our streets were very much in so much violence and hatred. So we said, we are fed up with what's happening and we need a new path. And we also need new leadership, which unfortunately we also don't have. So we called out for people to come and demonstrate, to end the violence, to end the war, the siege on Gaza, the occupation of the West Bank. And we had the first, demonstration in Jerusalem. And when we were there, thousands of people came. And we took the same demonstration to Tel Aviv. Thousands of people also came. And then we went to Haifa. And then we went to the Triangle area, which is mostly Palestinian cities and villages, and thousands of people also came. And it made us understand that maybe we are not, left radical lunatics. Maybe we really represent what people really want in our society, which is safety, which is living in a place where we are not afraid to send our kids to school. And from that, we said, we need to do something different, and Standing Together started. And through the years, we took part and we've led many struggles who are not just struggles for safety and ending the occupation, but also struggles for equality within our society, for social justice, for economic justice within the Israeli society, because one of the strategies that we believe in is that most of the people want the same things. And if we can lead a struggle that can combine different parts of our society, we can lead a new majority within our society. And that enabled us to grow as a movement. And when the 7th of October happened, that horrible day, each and every one of us, has his own story of how we woke up and where we woke up. But the ability that we already had people with us, we had chapters, we had activists, enabled us to stand up and fight back. And just 2 days after the 7th of October, we said, this cannot go on, because we understand what's going to happen. It is time to have a deal. And we called for a deal because we called for stopping this war, because we understood it's going to be a bigger war. And since then, we were able to go out to the streets. 2 months after the government allowed us to go out and demonstrate, we had solidarity guards. We had hotlines for students who were persecuted because they, said something about what was happening in Gaza, or even said anything about the politics of our government. But we also understood that we have a messianic government. There is no, debate about that. It led by people who think of dropping an atomic bomb on Gaza. And they are the only ones who are being heard within our society. And if we want to lead a bigger change and have more people with us, we need to give an alternative. We need to speak of another story. We need to talk about what is in the benefit of the people also living within our society. And that is not having another war with Gaza, and of course a war with Lebanon and maybe Syria. It is about finding a solution that benefits both people. And that solution is still a ceasefire, an end to this war, a deal that can bring back the hostages. And these are the solutions that people really need. So we went out to the streets each and every week. We grew bigger. And sometimes I don't really believe it that we still, manage to exist at these dark times, but standing together grew bigger. Today, we have 12 local chapters of activists in different cities, mixed cities, Jewish cities, Palestinian cities, and we have 14 student chapters in different colleges. We are, the biggest organized studential group in the campuses. And not just that, we grew with the numbers of people that we have with us. We grew in our social media. Standing Together today is the fifth largest organization on social media in Israel. And we grew up with leadership. Today we have more people in our platforms who can lead the change and speak about that change. And believe me, I do understand, sometimes it's easy to speak about hope. For us, sometimes it's really hard to speak about hope because this is a really dark time. But we also believe deeply that nobody will just wake up someday and say, this is the time we will save people from themselves in Israel, Palestine. Nobody will do that. The only way we can really have a real change is when we can convince our society what is in the benefit of it. And it is a stop to this war, and yes, having peace, a Israeli-Palestinian peace. And that is one of the main campaigns we have also been leading in the last year, because we believe that politics is also about competition. And we need to give our people the opportunity to have another political imagination that they can aspire for. And I think I will give it to you to talk about more campaigns. The last year.
So yeah, I would actually really want to share with you a kind of a success story. A success story in the midst of a very, very dark time. A success story about something that involves hunger, starvation. You all heard and saw that in the beginning, no food was allowed to get into Gaza after October 7th for many months. It came after the calls of the Israeli ministers saying, we will bring them back to the Stone Age, we will flatten Gaza, no food, no running water, we'll cut out their electricity. And that became reality, not only, posts on social media. At the beginning, our role, what we decided to do is to raise awareness. Say, starvation is not a legitimate thing. They are innocent people in Gaza. Our government, honestly also opposition members, sometimes from parties that would be called center-left, they could write posts, they can still write posts, there are no innocent people in Gaza. They could say, even the children of Gaza will become terrorists one day, so they are all, to be taken care of. So our role was to try and raise awareness. We drove convoys of our cars packed with food we brought from our home, saying we want to get to the border with Gaza to bring food to Gaza. We knew that we will get stopped and arrested by the army and the police, and we were. At the same time, by the way, where settlers got to go with buses from the West Bank, from their settlements, to the border of Gaza, celebrating what's been going on in Gaza, the bombardment, the killing, and calling to build or rebuild Jewish settlements in Gaza. Then when we were able to speak about the starvation, and when some government put pressure on the Israeli government to start bringing in aid trucks to Gaza, and some started to go, you all saw the pictures and videos of settlers blocking the entrance of aid into Gaza, putting stones on the road, putting people in the road, saying that they will not allow any aid to get into Gaza. It escalated really quickly into setting those trucks on fire, sending the Palestinian truck drivers from the West Bank to the hospital, even sending a few soldiers to the hospital. And we decided to call upon our members to join a humanitarian guard, to come every day to one of two shifts, to be volunteering, to stand between the aid trucks and the drivers and the settlers. More than 1,000 members of our movement started to divide into those shifts, to come day after day after day, to really put our bodies there, on the line between those trucks and food and the settlers. At the beginning, it was extremely violent. It was extremely disgusting, seeing sometimes 14-year-old girls from settlements holding knives in front of us, shouting at us to move away because they want to tear the sack of flour to the ground. And we need to deal with it. Weeks of aggressions and disputes and unpleasantness. After 2.5 weeks, the police started to show up. They didn't show up because settlers were attacking those aid trucks or sending Palestinians to the hospital. They started to show up because there were Israeli citizens on one side fighting with other Israeli citizens on the other side. And they wanted to, separate us. 2 weeks after, in the mornings, we came and the police was already there on the sides waiting for us to see what happened. 2 weeks after, already in the 6th week, the police started to block the road and to make way to the truck, not allowing us to be there and not allowing them. And this was our strategy, to make the police do something and intervene. Unfortunately, not one settler was arrested for really sending people to the hospital or spilling flour to the ground. But we were successful to make sure that all the aid trucks, since May 27, all the aid trucks that were allowed to go into Gaza by the army, the police, or the Israeli government are going there safely, and this is a success. This is a success. Thank you. I know it is not enough. I know it is not enough to really change the reality of 2.2 million people living in Gaza in bombardments and starvation and diseases and it's one of the most catastrophic human tragedies of this century. But we felt also it's not enough. And 2 months after we made sure that this is the reality and trucks can go to Gaza, we called upon the citizens of Israel to say this is our responsibility to see what is going on in our land. What is going on 50 minutes from you if you live in Tel Aviv. And start taking responsibility on this. Not only because it happens in the same land that we live on, but also because it happens by us, because of us. So we called on people to donate food themselves. Every second day, we moved from a collection, from one city to another city, building collection centers, and we got 400 trucks collected by Israeli citizens. Flour, rice, canned food, hygienic supplies, soap, a lot of women's supplies that were missed in Gaza. And we managed to create something that was amazing among Palestinian citizens of Israel, because we had a lot of these collection centers, especially in the Palestinian towns and cities. Because up until then, up until August, when we started this campaign, Palestinians were rightfully afraid to even say something. They were persecuted by the Israeli police. It was enough to write, "Don't kill the children in Gaza," to be taken away by the police, being blindfolded, handcuffed, and being filmed beneath the Israeli flag. I don't know if you saw these kind of pictures, beneath the Israeli flag, to send a message to other Palestinian citizens of Israel: know your place. Do not say anything. Do not get involved. Stay at your home if you want to get out of trouble. And it was effective. And in this campaign of collecting food, it all of a sudden burst. It became something of tens of thousands of citizens participating in it. Supermarkets in every city we got. There were 2 days that they were empty of these products. We called of people to come. It was an amazing phenomenon to witness. And we are proud, extremely proud to know that up until this day, every week we get dozens of trucks into Gaza. Yes, there is a lot of aid coming from other countries, a lot of aid coming from international organizations, but seeing the Israeli products, a shampoo named Pinuk, you know, something that is written in Hebrew being distributed right now to families in Gaza, I cannot tell you how much joy and pride it brings to our heart.
So we're going to take some questions. We're going to repeat questions. We really want to spend our time together asking Rula and Alon-Lee about their experience and their wisdom, rather than making this a platform for people to pontificate. So if you have a question, please raise your hand.
Do you find yourselves competing against Israeli media? And I came in late, so I don't know if you've already addressed this, but you know, we hear that many people in Israel are not seen, even through Israeli news sources, print sources, what's really going on in Gaza. So are you combating that as well?
Do you want us to answer one after one? Yeah? So I would say there is no real chance to compete, because most of the Israeli media is aligned with the government and what, you know, the message of the government. Just for a small example, the first time, you know, they ask us questions a lot abroad about how come really the Israeli society isn't seeing what's happening in Gaza. The fact is that the mainstream media that is shown to the, you know, all of the people living in Israel hasn't shown what was happening in Gaza. And if they do, they say it is because of Hamas people are dying, and it is Hamas trucks are being burned, and it is because of Hamas they had to bomb a school in Gaza. Okay, this is the media in Israel. And the only time people, you know, have seen something from Gaza was when the first soldiers came back from Gaza, which was, I think, in March or maybe April, at the beginning of this year. And then, you know, people started, you know, sometimes asking different questions. But still, the media is very much controlled by the government, that is controlled by lunatic messianic settlers who dream of having settlements in Gaza, having settlements in South Lebanon, conquering Syria, Jordan, and having, you know, greater Israel. These are the people who control our media. So the competition is not to try to get into mainstream media, because they don't invite people like us to mainstream media. The competition is, for us, is being able to have campaigns in the streets, in billboards, in big and huge billboards, and speak about what's happening in Gaza. And that is one thing we just had, you know, 2 days before we came here to the US. We collected money and we put on huge billboards in different main cities inside of Israel that show the pictures of the people who are losing from this fight. So there were pictures of kids starving from Gaza, people killed, destruction, people coming back from Gaza dead in coffins. That is one of the ways we try as a grassroots movement to show what's really happening through our social media, speaking and also trying to somehow give a competition, you know, to not the mainstream media, but to the politicians who are not even speaking about solutions for us. So we might not be that great of a competition, but we do try, and we do have ideas of how to do that in the next few months. And for that, I must say, I will take the opportunity and say, in order also to be that, we don't just need to be well organized, we also need money, okay? That is one of the things that is much needed also for a grassroots movement in order to do. And that is also a part of why we are here, because we need to fund in order to be able to, you know, give a fight back to very powerful forces that really control the media since the beginning of this war.
How do you envision changing the current political situation?
I'm going to take a couple.
Thank you for being here and for the work that you're doing. My question is about, I'm over here. My question is longer term in terms of the goals, especially since you were founded in 2015. And it's something that I struggle to understand, so I come to this with no prejudgment. To create peace, safety, but also equality for everyone. What I've heard, and please correct the premise if it's wrong, that then you get a majority within Israel that is not Jewish, so then how do you maintain a Jewish state? Even if you separate Israel and Palestine still within Israeli borders as they are? And should we maintain a Jewish state? Is that within the values of standing together? And how do you see equality among all people working within that?
We'll take this one and then we'll respond.
Yes, I'm a big fan of the podcast, Unapologetic, the Third Narrative. And I think that Ibrahim and Amira said they went to a big conference, peace conference in Paris, and they may have met with you, and they're dreaming of merging some of these groups. They're working on building a movement. So what are your thoughts on whether other groups, you and them, and other groups with the same vision might unite to form a larger movement?
Right. Okay, I will stand. Yeah, but we're standing each time one. So, yeah. So I would start with the two, and maybe Rula can answer the third one. I will say that it is sad to just internalize and to admit the very sad fact that Netanyahu has secured 2 more years in power. It is going to be probably 2 years that he can maintain his coalition that just got bigger with 4 more seats, and it gives him the range of opportunities to execute all of his policies without the opposition being able to tackle what they would believe shouldn't happen. And we also need to admit the fact that a lot of the parts of the Israeli opposition and maybe a future coalition that will replace Netanyahu are inherently extremely right-wing, supporting some of them Jewish settlements in Gaza, for sure supporting the Israeli occupation of the West Bank, for sure supporting Jewish supremacy and a lot of ways of racism and discrimination in Israel, and it is a problem we need to face with. So our answer is not a very short-term, unfortunately, it's a long-term answer, and it is the question of where are there political weights in Israel. Right now, there's only one strong political weight in Israel, and Rula said it. Politics eventually is about competition, about competing ideas. If people are presented with only one idea, with only one option in the menu, eventually they will choose out of those options in the menu. You don't go to a restaurant and you ask for, a dish that doesn't exist on the menu. And there are many different dishes out of the same menu in Israel, which is located in the right wing, and our job eventually is to put a political weight, a new option in the menu on the left side, saying none of us will be free or safe or equal until all of us can live in this reality. None of us will have a safe life. We will not be able to dream of a future for our children if Palestinians will continue to be oppressed in this country, living under military occupation, killed in the tens of thousands. And this is something we need to talk about and to force also this change upon the political system, meaning that yes, I expect to see the opposition parliament members, even from what is called left in Israel or center, starting talking about the reality in Gaza. It is unbelievable that 14 months to this war, they don't say nothing about the children being killed in Gaza, about the cities that are, do not exist anymore in Gaza. And this is our role to create more and more political pressure to widen the range of Israeli politics, and we think it will be translated into shifting parts of the Israeli politics and challenging them into these paradigms and ideas. And I think it actually speaks also to the second question, and I hope I do not offend or I say something uncomfortable, but I think I should say it because I really believe it. I'm a Jewish citizen of Israel. I live in what is called the Jewish state. But I want to challenge you and ask you, do you think Jewish people benefit from the reality in Israel? We know that Palestinians are the ultimate victim of this reality. We know that they lose the most. That we know that they're in the bottom of the social ladder of this reality. But do you think Jewish Israelis benefit from this reality? If someone will say yes, I will say they are delusional. And I will say also that this is the time when we hit this historic junction, when we hit this lowest point of our history to re-ask the questions of what do we need as people in Israel, and not what are the ideas of people outside of Israel that are thrown at us and are shuffling our reality and pushing us into a direction that we cannot agree with anymore. Because Israel is not a safe place for Jewish people. It is safer for Jewish people living outside of Israel than it is for Jewish people living in Israel. It is not the safe haven that we need to be living in, and we deserve better, and we cannot have a better reality until we will all have the same reality. And if someone will tell us that this reality should come over the expense, on the expense of another person that is not Jewish, then they will necessarily create a bad reality also for the Jewish people in Israel. There is no way to preserve a majority without discriminating another person. We need to admit and we need to let go. We need Israel, this country, to be the safe haven for the people living in it, for all the Jewish people. And yes, it should also be a safe haven for every Jewish person or other person that is persecuted because of their identity, their existence in the world. I want it to be. This is what we need. But it cannot be a supremacist state anymore, because this is the root cause of the violence that Jews are paying also a price from. The occupation, the supremacy, the racism, the killing, the oppression. So I hope it gives an answer. Thank you.
I think you missed one question, and I will try and answer you. But you asked specifically about the third narrative, right? Like, we know Amira and Ibrahim, they're good friends. They're also part, they're activists within Standing Together. And one of the things, that is good that we still have back home is the fact that we have different people trying to fight what's happening and leading a struggle in their way. Okay? It doesn't mean that all of us, will merge into one thing, but we still have, and we do work, all of us, different organizations, on different alliances in this struggle. So when we go out to a demonstration, we go out with many other organizations. When we have a podcast, we think of doing it with more people, bringing more opinions and more ideas. There is something very powerful in having more people working in their own way in order to reach the same goal, and then being also able to have a bigger alliance when it's needed, when we go out to the streets and have a big voice. So I do hope this gives you an answer to your question, but we do very much appreciate all kinds of partnerships that we have, and we have many.
Thanks. So what's the theory of change when it comes to Hamas, or terrorism, anti-Semitic terrorism in the future, if we can solve this problem?
Hi, thanks so much for for coming. You already mentioned one issue regarding Palestinian citizens of Israel and bigotry and racism that they face as far as arrests, but I'm curious, what other systemic issues do Palestinian citizens of Israel face on a daily basis?
A lot. But, okay. I do want to start with your question. And I do want to be clear that there is no empathy here for Hamas. Okay? I do want to start from that point. The reality that we live is one that we have forces that are not working for the benefit of the people on both sides. We do recognize that, and we do understand that. Thank you. Thank you. Very good. Thank you. Yeah. And what happened, on the 7th of October is something that Hamas should be held accountable for doing, because we are talking about war crimes. But at the same time, we cannot, not understand the fact that there are forces who are feeding one another and maintaining one another in power. And I've said it before, our government wants Hamas, and they need Hamas. And they practically give budget to Hamas in each and every year for them to stay in control, so people can be controlled, so we won't have alternatives to choose from. And at the same time, the reality is not a symmetric reality. When we look at the people living in Israel, we live in a very different status from the one that people in Gaza live. People who live under, siege for 17 years, the ability for them to make a change in their life reality is very much taken from them. But at the same time, we also need to understand that as long as our government is bombing in Gaza, as long as they are destroying schools and hospitals and infrastructures and killing people, Hamas will stay there. It's not going to just vanish. The way that Hamas won't have any more power within Gaza is not by dropping a bomb on Gaza. It is by stopping what's happening and letting people in Gaza have a real life so they can choose a different leadership. And believe me, people in Gaza do not choose Hamas. And they haven't chosen Hamas even 2 months before, but the people in Gaza haven't had also the ability to have any kind of elections, okay? And I do want to maybe end up with this. Military action doesn't bring any different realities. It takes us to the same point. So if we really want to look at the point where Hamas was the weakest within the Palestinians, it was in the 90s when they were speaking, about peace. And Palestinians had real hope that there would be peace. So the way we can eradicate all of these ideas is when we go to a place where people in Gaza and Israel, both of them have real safety. Okay. Your question was about?
Experiences of Palestinians.
Oh God, look, as minorities, and I think I'm like talking to the exact room, but as minorities in different places, we experience daily persecution, okay? In 2017, there was the nation-state law declared, and it says that Jews are first-class citizens and non-Jews are second-class citizens in Israel. It became something, written. Now, we were treated that way even before 2017. The reality of Palestinian citizens within Israel is a reality of daily persecution, okay? In each and every aspect, in workplace, in universities, in daily life, and in times that we have a war, the hatred towards us becomes more systematic by the government because they feed on it. It gives them power because they want to have more fractions within our society. And I think maybe understanding that, since the beginning of, since 1948, the declaration of Israel as a state, there was not even one new Palestinian village built. Not even one. So we live in accumulation in the same places, and the amount of people who live in the same city or village doesn't enable you to have, the luxury of other people. So the systematic way of how the government treats us, it's been there since 1948. And it is part of the understanding and standing together. It is a partnership, an equal partnership between the both of us, but in a very unequal system.
I'm going to invite, first of all, thank you to Alon-Lee and Rula. Omdim Yachad was here in November of last year, about a month and change after October 7th. Sally Abbott was here with Alon-Lee, not Rula, and the sanctuary was packed. It was the middle of the week, and I think because people are so hungry to hear of that alternative, because even in our press, you know, what we're reading also, I mean, there's a lot shown about Gaza, but I think in terms of lifting up another voice, it's so powerful to hear that coming directly from you. One of the organizations that supports Omdim Yachad Standing Together is the New Israel Fund, which we co-sponsored this with, and also we had an event on what day it was? Wednesday, even Tuesday, one of those days this week with New Israel Fund, which is an ongoing partnership that we have in order to lift up folks who are raising that alternative. And I want to invite Liz Greenstein, who's on our board and who's also on BJ's board, and also who is on the International Council of the New Israel Fund, to just say a word.
Thank you. So I first met Alon-Lee and his colleague Nadav, who's in the back someplace, and then on a very, very rainy afternoon in Ricky Lieberman's apartment, when on the BJ study tour back in January, and was really moved and motivated and excited then to hear them, and then who met Rula when they came back in the spring. I have my introduction in some ways to BJ was through the New Israel Fund. I realized when I was thinking about what I was going to say, I met Rolly when you came to Nathan Cummings, probably at some reception when I think you were on the board, and Felicia and I were in the New Generations group, which was the young leadership group for people in their 20s and 30s. Oh, but you found it? Okay. Which is to say we didn't meet all that recently. So I don't know. I have a birthday next week, so this is in the front of my brain. I think what's been particularly inspiring for me is understanding this change of generations. In the New Israel, let's just say when I was no longer quite in the 20s and 30s group anymore, the staff person from NIF took a bunch of us out for breakfast. We were all very close friends at that point, and he basically fired us on the spot. And he said that we were no longer in the group and we needed to step back and let the next generation take leadership. And I think what's so inspiring about listening to the two of them, and no offense, but I'm in the younger demographic in this room, and I'm not so young, is that this is about letting the next generation take leadership. And I think the amount that we can support them, those of us who have some additional capacity through New Israel Fund. New Israel Fund been around for the past 45 years now. It is the leader in supporting indigenous organizations within Israel. It is organizations founded of, by, and for Israelis, Jewish Israelis, Palestinian Israelis, to take ownership of their own destiny. And I think we really need to be supporting them in that work. So thank you very much, NIF.org. I'm sure if you're already a supporter of ours, thank you very much. If you haven't been, what's been amazing about the past, really since the rise of the pro-democracy protests in Israel, is really how vital NIF's vision, which has been around for a very long time, is really finally hitting a mainstream of people who understand that there needs to be support for an alternative vision. The status quo does not work. The paradigm needs to really be shifted. It's interesting to tie it back to Rabbi Jessica's Dvar Torah today about creating a different midrash. This is about creating a different midrash for the future of this country, and I hope you will join us in that work. Thank you.
So I just thank you to Liz, and you can follow them on social media. Alon-Lee posts basically all the time on Instagram with really strong, I'm not following Rula yet, but you should. I will. Here's your stuff. We have Avi Dabush on December 17th, Rabbis for Human Rights. Arik Asherman tomorrow, 11 to 1, if you want to find out more for Torah Tzedek. There's a landscape of people trying to create that alternative. We should do our best and be informed, lift up and support all this important work. Shabbat Shalom to everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
And
Thank you so much.
Someone left a cell phone.